بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Okay, today we'll go over the prostrations of forgetfulness, Sajdata as-Sahw, the two prostrations of forgetfulness, Sajdata as-Sahw. Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah in his book al-Umdat said, وَالسَّهْوُ عَلَى ثَلَاثَةِ أَضْرُبٍ, and this is under the chapter of the Sajdata as-Sahw, obviously. وَالسَّهْوُ عَلَى ثَلَاثَةِ أَضْرُبٍ, forgetfulness is one of three types. أحدها الزيادة زيادة فعل من جنس الصلاة كركعة أو ركن فتبطل الصلاة بعمده ويسجد لسهوه. This involves the addition of an action that is similar to the actions of the prayer, not foreign to the prayer, one of the actions of the prayer, but you add it, you repeat it, such as adding an additional rak'ah or pillar. The prayer is invalidated if that was done intentionally. If done absent-mindedly, the prostration for forgetfulness must be done for it. Clear? If you add something to the prayer, add a pillar to the prayer, one of the pillars of the prayer, you add it, you made ruku', you came up, and then instead of going down to sujood, you made another ruku'. That's making two ruku'as in one rak'ah. Okay? Unless we're talking about Salat al-Kusuf, we're talking about Salah in general, but this would be changing the hay'ah, the form of the Salah. And you can't do that. That invalidates your prayer. You decide that you're feeling good in the Salah and so on, so you decided that 4 rak'ahs for Dhuhr is too little. And you want to do more, and then you go up and do the 5th and so on. That invalidates your prayer because it is not up to you. Islam does have structure. Islam does have lines. Islam does have bounds. You're not making Islam. It was made already by God, perfected, sent down to his messenger, practiced, transmitted by generations of people. It's not up to you. All right. So if you do this absent-mindedly, you need to make prostrations of forgetfulness. If you do this intentionally, willingly, your prayer is invalid, batil. Then he said, وَإِنْ ذَكَرَ وَهُوَ فِي الرَّكْعَةِ الزَّائِدَةِ جَلَسَ فِي الْحَالِ. If one remembers while he is performing an additional rak'ah, he must sit down immediately. So you came up to the 5th rak'ah, someone reminded you that you came up to the 5th rak'ah. Women could be imams, right, of women. If there is a group of women could be imams. Because women are not imams not because of spiritual deficiency or anything. Women cannot be imams because of the Islamic sensibilities when it comes to mixing of genders. It is about Islamic modesty and propriety. It is not about the spiritual state of women who could be muftis, which is much higher than imams. But anyway, if someone reminds you that you have come up to the 5th rak'ah, sisters behind you reminded you that you came up to the 5th rak'ah, it's controversial, this imamship of women, but this is a stronger position of the majority of scholars. But when you're praying as an imam of a group of women and the sister reminds you that you came up to the 5th rak'ah, what do? You come down. You cannot continue the 5th rak'ah because there is no 5th rak'ah in Salat al-Dhuhr. If you came up to the 4th rak'ah and in Salat al-Maghrib and the sisters behind you told you subhanallah, or they clapped for you, then you would be interesting. And I didn't read about this. If a group of women, you probably clap because it's still the apparent meaning of the hadith. But if a group of women is praying alone, could you say subhanallah? Don't take anything from me now. I'm saying that you still clap, but it would be interesting if someone looked into this. If a group of women was praying alone, can they say subhanallah and not clap? But then someone clapped for you, and then you realize that they're clapping for you because you have and come up to the fifth rak'ah. If you think that you came up to the fourth, if you think that you didn't come up to the fifth rak'ah, it's the fourth rak'ah. What do you do? Someone clapped. If you, huh?
Just ignore them.
Ignore them, yes, and continue, yes. If this was one woman, what do? You ignore them. What about if it is two women? You come down. You must come down. It's not. These are two witnesses here. This is admissible proof in court. So you have two against one. You come down. And certainly 3 and 4, and if everybody behind you is clapping and you're just okay. So if it is one person clapping and you're confident that you're doing the fourth, carry on with your confidence and just continue. Ignore them. If it is two people, it's now 2 against 1. You come down. Okay. So. وإن ذكر وهو في الركعة الزائدة جلس في الحال. If one remembers while he is performing an additional rak'ah, he must sit down immediately. If he doesn't sit down, his salah is invalid. What do you do behind him? If you're praying in jama'ah, you don't go with him to the fifth rak'ah. Do you leave him? Yes, you leave him. Some of the scholars said you wait for him until he comes back and makes the sleep. But you leave him. According to the Hanbali madhab, you leave him. If he insisted on you basically praying 5 rak'ahs in dhuhr, then you sit down, you do your tashahhud and taslim and leave him. وإن سلم عن نقص في صلاته أتى بما بقي عليه منها ثم سجد. If he makes taslim while having missed a part of the prayer, he must perform that which he left out, and then prostrate. So someone prayed 2 rak'ahs, and this happened with the Prophet ﷺ. He prayed 3 rak'ahs, Asr 3 rak'ahs, and then he made taslim, and then he left to his room or to his house, and then Abu Dhul Yadayn followed him. The man with the 2 long arms followed him, and said to him, "Did the salah become shortened, O Messenger of Allah? Or you forgot?" And he said, "No, I did not forget, and the salah was not shortened." But then when the Prophet ﷺ went back and people corroborated what Dhul Yadayn said, he had witnesses, then the Prophet ﷺ yielded to them, and then he completed the prayer. Now, so how do you add something to the prayer? You could add like a rukn, you could add a rak'ah, or you could end the prayer early and then make up and then redo what you had left. And this would be addition. Why would it be addition? It should be the deletion, omission, not addition. Why was it put under the category of additions to the salah? Because eventually the net outcome of this is that your salah will have more than the usual salah. Why? Because at least you will have had julus, tashahhud, and taslim. Extra julus, tashahhud, taslim. Right? Because if you made the tashahhud after the 3rd rak'ah, and then you came back and you redid that 1 rak'ah, you will do another tashahhud. How many tashahhuds you made in this salah? 3. After the 2nd, after the 3rd, and after the 4th. So that is how you added to your salah. What if you did 2 rak'ahs and then you made taslim? You will have added taslim to the salah that did not belong there. And you will have added also, if you consider yourself to be making the last tashahhud, you will have added the salah ibrahimiyya to tashahhud. Okay, so this is the first type.
So
yes.
If we think we missed the rak'ah, so do we stand up and do Allahu Akbar and redo the rak'ah and then do the sahwi?
If you think you missed the rak'ah,
I think I missed the rak'ah. And
after you finish the prayer, okay. Keep in mind that Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali said in his book on Qawa'id that whenever you finish an act of worship and then thoughts come across your mind, إذا شك بعد الانتهاء من العبادة في ترك ركن If he doubts after completing the act of worship, if he doubts whether he left rukn out, then he ignores it. He does not, he just ignores it. But if this was immediately after and you were pretty, you had significant doubt that you missed one rak'ah, then certainly you go ahead and redo that rak'ah. When you redo the rak'ah, you'll do one rak'ah and then the tashahhud and the taslim and everything. But do not allow insignificant doubt, particularly after you finish the act of worship, do not allow insignificant doubt to basically cause you obsessions. That is extremely important. If you finished the act of worship, if you finished the wudu, you walked out of the bathroom, you are now standing to say Allahu Akbar, and then a thought comes across your mind, if you could have also tried, did I really wash my hands? Did I really wash my feet? You should ignore the thoughts. Insignificant doubt, particularly after you finish the act of worship, should be ignored. Otherwise, they may lead to obsessions. Okay. Then he said, so this is the first type of forgetfulness, addition to the salah. You added something, but you added something of the same nature of salah. Added something that's of the same nature of salah. Still, if you did this intentionally, your salah is invalid. If you did this absent-mindedly, your salah is valid, but you need to make the prostration of forgetfulness. Then he said, these subtitles are from me, between brackets. Addition, I'm adding a subtitle here. I would add a subtitle in the new version. Addition of an action foreign to the prayer. وَلَوْ فَعَلَ مَا لَيْسَ مِنْ جِنْسِ الصَّلَاةِ. If he does an action that is not similar to the actions of the prayer, لَاسْتَوَى عَمْدُهُ وَسَهْوُهُ. Then it is all the same, whether he did it intentionally or absent-mindedly. If you do something that is outside of the prayer, then whether it's absent-minded or intentional, it will invalidate your prayer. So if someone eats absent-mindedly, it invalidates your prayer. I'm sorry, but that should not be eating. If you did it absent-mindedly, you probably should pay more attention. Your prayer is still invalid. فإن كان كثيرا أبطلها. If that action is not trivial, it invalidates it. And if it is trivial, like the action of the Prophet ﷺ in his carrying of Umama and opening the door for Aisha, then there is no harm. So here they define to you, they sorted out from the scriptures, from the text, they sorted out the trivial from non-trivial. That's very beautiful. No fictitious border here between trivial and not trivial. From the scriptures, they told you that if the Prophet carried Umama in the Salah and considered that to be trivial, that is the limit of trivial. That is the limit of trivial. If the Prophet opened the door for Aisha, and this would require taking a couple of steps and then moving your hand and opening the door, this is considered trivial. In the Hanbali madhab, they consider this to be the line between trivial and non-trivial in the prayer. So if you move for a haja, for a need, and your move is not excessive, then not excessive, trivial, yasir, not kasir, not much movement, because much movement for a haja, you are allowed to move. You are allowed to run to save someone if they're drowning. Get out of the prayer. Run, save someone if they are drowning. Someone fell and hurt themselves. Yes, you are. But redo the prayer. That's all that's asked of you. Because it was too much. Yes, it was for a need. Your interruption of the prayer was completely justifiable, but in this case, you do need to redo the prayer from the beginning. But if you were able, your kid is crying, and if you're able to pick them up without much, like too much movement, and like the Prophet ﷺ carried Umama, then that would be permissible. Now, we're talking about actions that are not particularly offensive to the purpose of the prayer, because yasir al-akl in the Hanbali madhab, eating little in the Hanbali madhab, will invalidate your prayer, whether it is fard or sunnah, because eating is really foreign. Talking to people is really foreign to the prayer, too foreign. Like some move is not completely foreign to the prayer. So the yasir, the little movement, will be tolerated in the Hanbali madhab. Much movement is not tolerated. Whether it's justifiable or not, it interrupts the prayer. But little movement is tolerated, and they define for you little movement. This little movement does not include acts that are completely foreign to the prayer. Talking to someone invalidates your prayer. If you talk to someone, if you tell them two letters invalidates. If you say, that's, well, how many letters is that? No, but this is permissible. You know, Imam Ahmad used to do this. Marwazi said when I came to Imam Ahmad, he كان يتنحنح لأعرف أنه في الصلاة. He used to know that he is in the prayer. But if you do this without a need, and you utter two letters, then your prayer is invalidated. If you speak to someone, if you say to someone anything, your prayer is invalidated. They disagree over saying something that is in the interest of the prayer. But in the Hanbali madhab, in the authorized view, although the other view also strong in the madhab, in the authorized view, they tell you don't say anything. Any speech to anyone, whether it's in the interest of the prayer or not, would invalidate your prayers. Another view in the Hanbali madhab would allow you to say to the Imam who's not really there, you say subhanallah and he's not there, you tell him this is your fifth rak'ah. You tell him this is your fifth rak'ah. So they allowed this, but the authorized view in the madhab is that any talk, whether it is in the interest of the prayer or not in the interest of the prayer, any talk to someone invalidates your prayer. Eating, all invalidates your prayer. Now, they disagreed over drinking. Now, this eating is not when you had something and you swallowed it, like you had something in your teeth and before the prayer and you swallowed it. That is okay, they let you do that. But eating is when you take something and you know. But if you have to chew it for a significant amount of time, if you have to chew something for a significant amount of time, that there will not be so you got a lot of stuff between your teeth, and you get and then chewing and then swallow. That doesn't work. That invalidates the prayer. But drinking in the nafla prayer, they allowed this. Drinking in the nafla prayer, in the sunnah prayer, they allowed this. It is not for us, it is for them. It's like someone like Ibn Zubayr who used to pray, you know, long enough for the birds to stand on top of his back. Yes, they may take a sip of water because after reciting half of the Quran in one rak'ah or something, they felt a little bit thirsty and they needed to take a sip of water in their night prayers and their qiyamul layl. But for us, you know, let's be reasonable here. You know, your two rak'ahs will never get you thirsty. That thirsty. Okay, so then Imam Ibn Qudamah said, so this is adding something that is foreign to the prayer. And we said that no eating, no drinking, for practical purposes, no eating, no drinking, no speaking, but some movement may be tolerated if it is like carrying Umama or opening the door for Aisha. This would be tolerated, you know, more than this would not be tolerated. الضرب الثاني, the second type, كنسيان واجب, omission, and naqs, because nisyan wajib, omission, such as forgetting a mandatory action. Why will he say this? Because when you omit a pillar, you must redo the pillar. When you omit a pillar, you must redo the pillar. So eventually omission of a pillar will never be considered naqs in the salah, omission, because you have to redo it. The salah is incomplete without redoing it. So if you omit a pillar, you must go back and redo it. So naqs is only the naqs of wajib, omission of wajib. Because omission of pillar, you will have to redo it. Omission of something that is preferable, mustahab, sunnah, you don't have to redo it, and you do not even have to do the prostrations of forgetfulness. Yes, it is preferable for you to do the prostrations of forgetfulness if you forget and say something in a place that it doesn't belong to it. Like if you read the tashahhud when you're standing, for instance, forgetful, absent-mindedly. And then it is recommended for you to do the prostrations of forgetfulness. It's not required. And if you forget a sunnah, if you forget pointing with your finger, for instance, during tashahhud, if you forget this, it is not even recommended in the madhab, it's just permissible in the madhab to do sujood sahw, prostrations of forgetfulness, if you want to. But omission of a wajib, something that is mandatory, not a pillar or a sunnah, would require you to pray the sujood of sahw. And if you intentionally do not pray the sujood of sahw, you invalidated your prayer. Okay. فإن قام عن التشهد الأول فذكر قبل أن يستتم قائما رجع فأتى به وإن استتم قائما لم يرجع. If he stands up before performing the first tashahhud and remembers it before he's fully erect, then he should go back and perform it. However, if he remembers after he becomes fully erect like this, he should not go back. So you did not, after the 2 rak'ahs in Salat al-Dhuhr, you're coming out from the prostration of forgetfulness. No, I'm not going to prostrate. You come up from the prostration of forgetfulness, and you're like this, and someone says, Subhanallah, and you're like this. What are you going to do? You go down. Okay, now you're like this. What are you going to do? He said that you should not go down. You should continue. Now, in the madhab, if you go down after standing up completely erect like this, it is disliked, as long as you have not started the recitation. If you had started the recitation, it becomes forbidden. And if you knowingly, knowing that it is forbidden to go down after you started the recitation, let's say someone started the recitation for the 3rd rak'ah and they reminded him, and then he went down for the tashahhud. If he knows that this is forbidden, his salah is invalid. His salah is invalid. If he does not know, it is okay. But if he knows that it is forbidden, his salah is invalid. What if he went down after he stood up completely, but before the recitation? They consider it disliked. They do not consider it forbidden, and they would not invalidate the salah if he goes down. But they prefer for him to continue since he's already standing. Why? Because this is a rukn. This standing is a rukn. The first tashahhud is what? Wajib, not a rukn. A step lower than the rukn. You do not go back from the rukn to the wajib. You do not violate the sacredness of the rukn for the wajib. What if you forgot the second sajda? What if you forgot the second sajda? The same will apply. The same will apply. But can you go back? The same will apply because this rukn particularly is starting a new rak'ah. But what if you forgot the ruku' in your sujood? Can you go back to ruku'? Yes, you can. Because this is leaving a rukn for a rukn. This is leaving a rukn for a rukn within the same rak'ah. So you forgot the ruku', and then after you recited al-Fatiha, you went right to sujood. You go back to ruku'. You can go back from a rukn to a rukn. If you're inside the same rak'ah, if you left the rak'ah, and when would you be considered complete, that you completely left the rak'ah? When you started a recitation of the following rak'ah. once he started a recitation for the following rak'ah, this means that he completely left the previous rak'ah. Now, if you missed a rukn in the previous rak'ah, you don't go back to it because you're already in a different rak'ah. You basically subtract that rak'ah from your prayer. You have one invalid rak'ah. So if you prayed 2 and you came up for the 3rd, and then when you are in the 3rd, you remember that you did not make the second prostration in the second rak'ah, you are now in the 2nd, not the 3rd. One rak'ah is dropped. So if if you leave the first tashahhud and you forget the first tashahhud, stand up for the 3rd rak'ah, someone reminds you, you're completely standing, don't go back, and it would be forbidden to go back if you had already started the recitation, and it would invalidate your prayer. وإن نسي ركنا فذكره قبل شروعه في قراءة ركعة أخرى رجع فأتى به وبما بعده وإن ذكره بعد ذلك بطلت الركعة التي تركه منها. If he remembers after wait a second. If he forgets a pillar and remembers it before he begins the recital of another rak'ah, the next rak'ah, he must go back and perform it, and whatever is after it. If he remembers it after that recital of the next rak'ah, then the rak'ah in which he missed the pillar is invalidated. We went over this. You remember you're in sujood, remember that you did not make ruku' within the same rak'ah, go back to your ruku'. Once you have started the recital in the following rak'ah, you're not going back to fix anything in the previous rak'ah. You're just subtracting the previous rak'ah from the count.
So do you make it up?
Do you make it up?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But what are you making up? You're dropping the whole rak'ah. So now you're considering yourself in the 2nd, not the 3rd.
But if you're in the ruk'ah, you're making the sujood, you forgot you didn't do the, what do you call it, the bowing.
Ask me questions, because this ambiguation is important. You know, you don't have to defer all the questions if the questions are to clarify things. Yes.
So if I forgot to do the subhana rabbi al-azim, the
Prostration.
What did you forget?
The bowing. So I forgot.
You forgot the ruku'. Okay.
I did the sujood,
You did the sujood.
and then I remembered, I didn't do the bowing. Do I stand up and do that bow?
Yes.
I do.
Yes. If you are in sujood, which bowing are you talking about? The same rak'ah.
Same rock.
Same rak'ah, not the previous rak'ah. The same rak'ah. You are in sujood. You forgot. You remember that you forgot to bow. You come up and bow. You leave your sujood. Because you're leaving a pillar for a pillar.
Right.
Ruku' is a pillar, so you need to go back. What if you forgot in ruku' to say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim? You go back to make ruku' and say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim? No, you don't, because this is wajib. It's not a pillar. You don't leave a pillar for a wajib. In this case, if you forgot to say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, you will do the 2 prostrations of forgetfulness at the end. They'll make up for that. That's the difference between pillars and mandatory actions. The pillars, you have to redo them. If you are inside the same rak'ah, go back to them and redo them and go from there. Carry on from there. The mandatory actions are not like the pillars. You do not have to redo them. If you had left them and engaged in a different pillar, then all you need to do, 2 prostrations of forgetfulness. So any of the 7 mandatory actions that we talked about pillars and mandatory actions before, talked about the 12 pillars and the 7 mandatory actions. Any of the mandatory actions that you forget, the tashahhud al-awwal, the first tashahhud, is considered a mandatory action. Okay, so if you forget this, don't go back to it. If you started the following rukn or pillar, do the 2 prostrations of forgetfulness, they'll make up for this forgetfulness.
Doctor,
Yes.
question. So if I finish the rak'ah and then I remember I didn't do the bowing, and I start the new rak'ah, and I start Surah al-Fatiha. At that time, do I repeat? But I remember now I didn't do the bowing. Do I repeat the whole rak'ah?
You repeat the whole rak'ah, because one whole rak'ah now is invalid. If you left the rak'ah If you had already departed from rak'ah 2, you're in rak'ah 3. Every rak'ah is an independent unit. If you had departed from rak'ah 2 to rak'ah 3, and keep in mind, there is controversy over this also, because there is always, there is controversy that if you did not get to the same pillar in the following rak'ah, you could go back. But just don't confuse yourself. Don't confuse yourself. If you started a new rak'ah, and remember that you missed a pillar from one of the previous rak'ahs, whether it's from the first, the second, doesn't matter. All you need to do is just subtract that rak'ah from the count. So now that you prayed 2 rak'ahs and now you're in the third, you remember that you forgot one sujood in the first. You forgot bowing in the second. It doesn't matter. All you need to do now, consider yourself to be doing the second rak'ah now, not the third. One whole rak'ah is lost. So consider yourself to be doing the second rak'ah. وَإِن نَسِيَ 4 سجدات من 4 ركعات فذكر في التشهد سجد في الحال فصحت له ركعة ثم يأتي ب3 ركعات. If he forgets, وإن نسي 4 سجدات من 4 ركعات, if he forgets 4 prostrations out of 4 rak'ahs and remembers while he is in the tashahhud, he should prostrate himself immediately, thus validating 1 rak'ah, and then he must perform 3 rak'ahs. He's telling you the same concept. He's telling you if you forget something from the same rak'ah that you're in, you could go back and make up that very rukn or pillar. If you forget from a previous rak'ah, lost the rak'ah. So now you're sitting in tashahhud and you remember. These are called fiqhi riddles. These are they sharpen your fiqhi sort of thought process. Yes?
If you, how certain should you go to the act? Like if I forget to the point that I don't know if I did it or I didn't do it, so I consider it done or not done?
تبني على اليقين. You base it on certainty, not propensity, not غالب الظن, which is propensity. In the madhab, تبني على اليقين. You base it on certainty. Therefore, if you're in doubt, consider yourself to not have done it. You need to make sure that you had done it. In the madhab, you تبني على اليقين. And we will come to this. So now that you are in the 4th rak'ah, you are in tashahhud, the last tashahhud. You remember that in every rak'ah you made 1 sujood only. Can someone do this? Yes, someone can do this. So someone who's new, learning new stuff, they could do this. So you remember that you had prayed, missed 1 sujood in every rak'ah. Then the only rak'ah that you could salvage is number 4. Can you salvage number 1, 2, or 3? No, you cannot salvage them because you're already in number 4. The only rak'ah you could salvage is number 4. Now you're in tashahhud, go back and make the sujood. Go back and make sujood. And then what are you going to need to do? You're not going to make tashahhud. You're going to go back up after the sujood to pray rak'ah 2, 3, 4, and then make another tashahhud and end your prayer. Okay, so then he said الضرب الثالث الشك. The third type is doubt. فمن شك في ترك ركن فهو كتركه له. Whoever doubts whether he has missed a pillar, it is as if he missed it. So basing your actions on certainty. ومن شك في عدد الركعات بنى على اليقين إلا الإمام خاصة فإنه يبني على غالب ظنه. Whoever doubts the number of rak'ahs he prayed, he must proceed on the basis of certainty, except for the imam who proceeds on the basis of what's more probable, propensity, not certainty. Okay, let me explain this and then we will take a lot of questions. So now, shak is not all the same. Doubt is not all the same. Doubt varies. So what do? In the madhab, and in the Maliki and Shafi'i madhabs as well, Doubt is like certainty that you did not do it. You will have to have certainty that you did it for you to count. You have to have certainty that you did it for this rak'ah or this pillar to count. If you have doubt, go back. If you are in sujood and you have doubt whether you bowed or not in this rak'ah, go back. If you have doubt whether you prayed 2 or 3 rak'ahs, it is 2 until proven otherwise. Because certainty is 2, and you're doubting the third. Doubt, remove the doubt. Base it on certainty. We have 2 ahadith here. 2 ahadith that are very, like, the crux of this matter. It depends on these 2 ahadith and reconciliation between them. One hadith comes from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. This hadith was reported by Bukhari and Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man shakka fi salatihi falyataharra as-sawab or falyataharra al-aqrab min as-sawab waliyutim thumma yusallim thumma yasjud sajdatayn." Whoever has doubt in his prayers, he should try to figure out what is more probable. Try to figure out try to sort out what he did and figure out what's more probable, and then proceed on that basis, on the basis of this determination that he will make. Yataharra, try to remember, attempt to remember, yataharra. So then he proceeds on that basis. Basis on what? Propensity here. Likely I prayed 3. He will proceed on the basis that he likely prayed 3. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, ثُمَّ يُسَلِّمْ. This is not, the end of the hadith is not in your book. Then he makes taslim, and then he makes 2 sajdas. Then he makes taslim, and after taslim, he makes 2 sajdas. This is the hadith of Abdullah bin Mas'ud. And then we have a hadith from Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, which was reported by Muslim and others. In this hadith by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man shakka fi salatihi falam yadri asalla thalathan am arba'an falyatrah ash-shakk walyabni ala ma istayqana or falyabni ala al-yaqeen thumma liyutimma salatah." Whoever has doubt in his prayer and he does not know or remember whether he prayed 3 or 4 rak'ahs, let him cast the doubt away, base the rest of the prayer, proceed on the basis of certainty, yabni ala ma istayqana, proceed on the basis of certainty. Certainty is what? The lesser number. Not the 3, the 2. Not the 4, the 3. Not the 2, the 1. Okay, if you have the doubt. So basis on certainty. And then the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith that he will make the prostrations before taslim. Before taslim. Okay, so now we have 2 hadith. One hadith says base it on certainty. One hadith said base it on propensity and proceed on the basis of propensity. Now, the Hanbalis, Malikis, and Shafi'is, they took the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, which is the apparent meaning of the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, base it on certainty. And they said you need to make certain that your prayer is complete, so you base it always on certainty. And the lesser number. So what are they going to do with the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud? They said that what Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, فَلْيَتَحَرَّ الصَّوَابِ, let him figure out what is more probable. Let him figure out what's more probable. This meant figure out what is certain. فَلْيَتَحَرَّ الصَّوَابِ meant go on the basis of certainty. Because sawab, that which is right, means that which is certain. Let him figure out what. فَلْيَتَحَرَّ الصَّوَابِ literally means what? Let him figure out what is right. Because sawab is not propensity. This is my own, basically, interpolation here. The sawab is what is correct. Let him figure out what's correct. The Maliki, Shafi'is, and Hanbali said, let's figure out what is correct means let's figure out what is certain. And this is how they took the apparent meaning of the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and reinterpreted the apparent meaning of the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, and reinterpreted the meaning of the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. Then Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam al-Lays said they all proceed on the basis of certainty. They all proceed on the basis of certainty, except the sort of what we call, frequent flyers. They're always having obsessions. They're always having doubts. People that have obsessions and doubts, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam al-Layth said, for those people, they base it on propensity. If they're doubting their salah all the time, for the rest of us, who, not the rest of us, for many of us, most of us, who have little doubts here and there, every couple of days, this and that, For the rest of us who have the infrequent doubts, when you have doubt, Imam Abu Hanifa is saying, cast the doubt away based on certainty. So he's like the Maliki, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis when it comes to the majority of us. But only for the people who have frequent doubts, Imam Abu Hanifa has a category for them, and Imam al-Layth ibn Sa'd, rahimahumullah ta'ala. They have a different category for those people. Makes perfect sense, right? Because the people who have plenty of doubts, if you always tell them that you have to base it on certainty, they'll be perpetually praying for their entire lives. It's not going to end. Then al-Imam al-Awza'i and al-Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, they said, all people base it on propensity. So what would they do with the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, فَلْيَبْنِي عَلَى الْيَقِينِ يَطْرَحَ الشَّكِّ? They said that when there is propensity should be treated like certainty. يَبْنِي عَلى الْيَقِينِ, let him يَبْنِي عَلى الْيَقِينِ يَطْرَحَ الشَّكِّ يَبْنِي عَلى الْيَقِينِ applies to only one case if it is a complete tie, 50-50. And that is, let me tell you this. Imam al-Layth and Imam al-Awza'i and Imam Sufyan al-Thawri said that he will always be able to figure it out. He will always be able to come, to figure out the propensity here. It is a variant position of Imam Sufyan al-Thawri's and Imam al-Awza'i's that was adopted by some Hanbalis and chosen by Ibn Taymiyyah. In this variant position of the Imam al-Awza'i and Sufyan al-Thawri's position, they said most of the time they'll be able to figure it out. They divide doubt into two different creatures. Doubt that is complete tie, and doubt where there is a difference in the likelihood. Doubt that is 50-50, then in this case, they said like the majority. Hanafis, Malikis, Shafi'is, Hanbalis, like the majority. This type of doubt, you go on the basis of certainty. If it is 50-50, you always take the lesser number. You're in doubt whether you prayed 3 or 4, you prayed 3. You're in doubt whether you prayed 2 or 3, you prayed 2. This is the doubt that is 50-50. Doubt that is 70-30. You have just a little doubt, 30%, but 70%, 80%, I prayed 3. They tell you, base it on propensity. Propensity here is what? The higher likelihood, the higher probability. If you 70%, 80% think you prayed 3, okay, you prayed 3. So these are different, all of them are trying to reconcile between the hadith. One of them, the apparent implication of one of them is that you figure out what is more probable and you proceed on the basis of propensity. That is the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and the other one, the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. It's always Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He gives you the more sort of, it is just Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. It's not like Abdullah ibn Mas'ud made it up, but Abdullah ibn Mas'ud relates the things that are fiqh-wise, sort of have a lot of strength. Anyway, different issue. But is that clear or not clear? The disagreement. What's the take-home message here? Take-home message is, if you are the infrequent doubter, just take the position of the majority and always proceed on the basis of certainty. if you're a frequent doubter, then try to figure out and proceed on the basis of propensity. Because if you always base it on certainty, you could be in much hardship. Is that clear? Yes.
This applies to Tahara too, right?
This applies to Tahara as well. It applies to anything.
Those that have obsessive doubts, shouldn't they ignore them altogether? Give them no regard? Because they know they're biased in that direction?
Because, yeah, like I said in the book, we're talking about the significant doubt. We're not talking about the obsessive doubts. Those who have obsessive doubts, these are considered insignificant. They should be ignored all the time. But we're talking about significant doubt, which will happen to some people if they are having frequent doubts. Then we will treat them like Imam Abu Hanifa said, that they will proceed on the basis of certainty. And in this way, they'll be consistent. Frequent doubters, if they proceed on the basis of propensity and not certainty, they'll be consistent with Imam Abu Hanifa's choice, Imam al-Layth, Imam al-Awza'i, Imam Sufyan al-Thawri, one Hanbali variant of the Hanbali madhab, and Imam Taymiyyah. So, and others as well. But these are just some of the names that they will be in agreement with. Now, this is legitimate doubt. Most of the obsessions of the obsessive people, the OCD folks, most of their obsessions are illegitimate. They should not be considered to begin with. They should be just completely ignored. And people who are OCD, you know that they have OCD. And in this case, we tell them that most of your doubts are insignificant. Disregard them. Yes?
Sorry. When you said the doubt about Tahara, so if you're not sure if you have wudu or not, what's the take again?
If you're not sure whether you had wudu or not, then you proceed on the basis of certainty. Like, if you're not sure whether you had wudu or not, you proceed on the basis of certainty. You did not have wudu until you're certain that you had wudu. But if you're not sure whether you broke your wudu or not, that's a different story. If you're not sure whether you had it, made it, you did not have it until you're sure that you had it. If you're not sure whether you broke it, you did not break it until you're sure you broke it. Okay, the next then Imam Qudamah says, وَلِكُلِّ سَهْوٍ سُجْدَتَانِ قَبْلَ السَّلَامِ إِلَّا مَنْ سَلَّمَ عَنْ نَقْصٍ فِي صَلَاتِهِ وَالْإِمَامِ إِذَا بَنَى عَلَى غَالِبِ ظَنِّهِ وَالنَّاسِ لِلسُّجُودِ قَبْلَ السَّلَامِ فَإِنَّهُ يَسْجُدُ سَجْدَتَيْنِ بَعْدَ سَلَامِهِ ثُمَّ يَتَشَهَّدُ وَيُسَلِّمُ. So this is about when to make the prostration of forgetfulness, before taslim or after the taslim. In the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, where he said that he proceeds on the basis of certainty, he said before taslim. In the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, when he said that he proceeds on the basis of propensity, he said after taslim. So when does he make the sujood of the sahw? Prescribed for every forgetfulness, that is every element of the prayer that one forgets to perform, are two prostrations before the taslim, except for three conditions in the Hanbali madhab that will warrant taslim, prostration after the taslim. Keep in mind, all of this is about preference. In the Hanbali madhab, you could make all the sujood before the taslim, you could make all the sujood after the taslim. All the sujood before, all the sujood after, all acceptable in the Hanbali madhab. This is about preference. Preference is you make it all before the taslim, except in three conditions. Man sallama an naqsan fi salatih, one who makes taslim too early prior to actually completing his prayer. Because man sallama an naqsan fi salatihi, this is hadith Dhul Yadayn, the man with the two long arms. When the Prophet came back and completed the prayer, he made sujood after the taslim, not before. So Imam Ahmad said he should make sujood all the time before the taslim, except when it is reported otherwise. And there were three conditions where it was reported otherwise. Someone who ended his prayer early and made up what he missed, the Prophet then made sujood sahw after the taslim. And then he says, وَالْإِمَامِ إِذَا بَنَى عَلَى غَالِبِ ظَنِّهِ. And One who forgets, one who forgets to prostrate on account of forgetting to perform any part of the prayer before the taslim. Oh, no, the previous one. The Imam, if he proceeded on the basis of the more probable, of propensity. Why? Because in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, where the Prophet ﷺ talked about proceeding on the basis of propensity, then the Prophet said, ثُمَّ يُسَلِّمْ ثُمَّ يَسْجُدَ سَجْدَتَيْن. Then let him make taslim and then make 2 sajdas. The person who proceeded on the basis of propensity, he would make the 2 sajdas after the taslim in this hadith. And this is another way to reconcile. The Hanbalis would allow him to proceed on the basis of certainty if he was an Imam. And this is a variant position in the Hanbali madhab that is as strong as the other positions. There are 2 contending positions here in the Hanbali madhab. The Imam also, like the Ma'mum, in the other position, he proceeds on the basis of certainty. But in this position, they tried to reconcile between the 2 hadith, and they said that he may proceed on the basis of propensity as in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, if he was Imam. Why did they say this? Because they said that the congregation behind him would remind him if he forgot. So he's likely, if he proceeds on the basis of propensity with this corroborative evidence, the lack of correction from the congregation behind him adds to his feeling that I prayed 3, because if I prayed 2, the congregation will remind me. So the fact that the congregation did not remind me, this corroborates my feeling that I prayed 3, and I proceed on the basis of propensity, in this case as an Imam, because I almost have certainty now. The lack of correction from the congregation serves to boost my certainty. So they figured that this is another case. The last case, if you needed to make the sujood before taslim, but you forgot the prostrations of forgetfulness. Again, you forgot the prostration of forgetfulness. So after you made taslim, then you can prostrate. You can prostrate after you made taslim. When is this? If there is not long interruption. What is long interruption? They don't define it in the Hanbali madhab, because the Prophet walked into his house and then Abu Yadayn ran after him and told him, the Prophet. So that separation, even walking out of the masjid. But if it was not too long, you did not break your wudu meanwhile, because if you broke your wudu, that's it. Now, if you forgot to pray the 2 prostrations of forgetfulness, and you remembered within a reasonable time, then you make the 2 prostrations of forgetfulness. What if you remembered later, after like a considerable delay, that now you cannot make the 2 prostrations of forgetfulness? Don't worry, your prayer is valid. Why? Because the prostrations of forgetfulness are wajib, mandatory, not pillars. So if you forget what is mandatory in the Hanbali madhab, if you forget what is mandatory, your prayer is still valid. Okay? Now, then, the last thing here, وَلَيْسَ عَلَى الْمَأْمُومِ سُجُودْ سَهْوٍ إِلَّا أَنْ يَسْهُوَ إِمَامُهُ فَيَسْجُدَ مَعَهُ ومن سهى إمامه أو نابه أمر في صلاته فالتسبيح للرجال والتصفيق للنساء. The prostration of forgetfulness is not mandatory upon the one who is led in the prayer, the ma'moom, except when his imam forgets, then he prostrates with him. So because your imam is responsible, he's the driver, you're just a rider, you're the passenger, your imam is responsible for mistakes. If you forget inside, the prayer of the imam makes up for your forgetfulness. Don't worry about it. You're following the imam, you're the prayer of imam. When do you prostrate? When your imam prostrates, you prostrate with your imam. When is it that the ma'moom will need to prostrate even if he was praying with the imam the whole prayer? Certainly, if you were not praying with the imam the whole prayer, you prayed 2 rak'ahs with the imam and 2 rak'ahs alone, and you forgot something in your 2 rak'ahs, then you will need to prostrate, because here you were the driver. You were responsible for your forgetfulness in these 2 rak'ahs. But when is it in the Hanbali madhab that you will need to prostrate, even if you prayed with the imam from the beginning to the end? You still need to prostrate if the imam does not prostrate. If it was wajib on the imam to prostrate, let's say the imam missed the first tashahhud, So it is wajib on him not to prostrate. He stood up, he started to recite, they reminded him that he missed the first tashahhud, he did not come back down. So what is expected of this imam at the end of the salah? That he will prostrate. What if he did not prostrate before the taslim? Wait, maybe he thinks that he should prostrate after the taslim. Wait. So what if he did not prostrate after the taslim? You prostrate. You prostrate. Even if you made taslim with him, you're sitting, you freeze in your place, waiting for the imam to prostrate. And then he doesn't prostrate. Then you prostrate. ومن سهى إمامه أو نابه أمر في صلاته فالتسبيح للرجال والتصفيق للنساء. For one whose imam forgets or something concerned him during the prayer or his prayer, then فالتسبيح للرجال, then the rijal make tasbih, the men make tasbih, and clapping is for women. This is how you correct the imam. Clear? Alhamdulillah, all is clear. And this will bring us to the end. And I'm sorry we are a little bit late. We will give time for people to leave, and then we will take questions thereafter. Subhanakallahumma hamdik, inshallah, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.